Waking up, I found myself in the role of an old-school, abusive, domineering CEO. Seeing my son willing to die for his white moonlight, I slapped him across the face. Seeing my daughter-in-law kneeling in the rain while heavily pregnant, I slapped my son across the face. Seeing the white moonlight, using manipulative words to frame others, I slapped my son across the face. My son grabbed my hand. "Mom, I'm the only heir of our family," I sneered, and slapped him again with the back of my hand. "You little brat, I'll just have your dad and I reincarnate another one someday." My husband seemed about to say something, but I raised my hand again. "You don't want to." George's lips trembled. "Yes, I guarantee it will be born." While going down the stairs, he lost focus for a moment, missed a step, and hit the stairs hard. An unfamiliar mechanical voice echoed in his mind. "Dramatic revision system has been bound." Countless fragments of memories flooded my mind, and I found myself unexpectedly recalling my original memories. It turned out that the world I was in was just a romance novel I had read before, where the male lead tormented the female lead both physically and emotionally, often leaving me with a sense of helplessness, as if I couldn't slap the screen. In the end, I died young due to breast nodules, and when I woke up again, I had already become one of the characters in the book. The mother of that physically and emotionally abusive domineering male lead. Because my anger towards the character has reached the threshold, the system has granted me the authority to revise the plot. As long as I correct the absurd, 100% melodramatic storyline of this novel, I can return to my original world. At the moment, the plot has reached the point where the white moonlight returns and tells the male lead that the reason she left him back then was because she had an incurable illness. My rebellious son immediately believed it and is now desperately trying to save the white moonlight, threatening to make all the doctors in the city pay with their lives if she isn't cured. I jolted awake, realizing I couldn't let this idiot's son continue to embarrass me. I opened my eyes abruptly, only to find my hand tightly held by someone. George noticed I was awake, paused, and calmly withdrew his hand. "You're awake. Are you feeling unwell anywhere?" I looked at my husband in front of me and couldn't help but feel speechless, realizing that the person I had spent so many years with was merely a character from a book. I picked up the blanket and lay back down. "George, my head is so dizzy, I feel terrible." George frowned, his gaze shifting toward the family doctor beside him. Dr. James broke into a sweat. "Mr. Green, we've already conducted a thorough examination. Your wife just has a bump from the fall. With some medication to promote blood circulation and reduce swelling, she'll recover quickly." "What about Frank? His mother nearly died from the fall, and he still hasn't come to see me." George glanced at me a few times, then asked Dr. James to examine me again before stepping out to make a phone call. Dr. James, holding the medical device, was sweating. "Ma'am, what else is bothering you?" I chuckled. "It's nothing. I'll feel better once Frank comes back." After receiving George's call, Frank quickly returned home. Before even entering the door, I could hear his bubbly voice. "Dad, what's the emergency? I'm in the middle of something over here." As soon as he pushed the door open and saw me lying listlessly on the bed, Frank was clearly startled. He hurried over, dropping his usual tone, and asked anxiously, "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Frank looks very much like me, almost as if we were cast from the same mold. Only those eyes are like George's, deep and passionate, giving off a playboy vibe at first glance. I called out weakly to Frank, gesturing for him to come closer. "Frank, come to mommy." Frank hurried to my bedside, and I sprang up from the bed with lightning speed, full of energy, swinging my arm in a full arc. I gave him a resounding slap. A loud smack echoed, stinging my hand from the impact. George was stunned. Frank was stunned. And Dr. James packed up his things without looking up and made a quick exit. "This slap is for your fickleness." Frank stood there in a daze, staring at me. In all his life, he had probably never been hit like this before. As the only son of the Green family, George was gentle and kind, and I had my own reasons for being virtuous. At most, I would scold him a few times, but I had never laid a hand on him. His life had been smooth sailing, but after awakening, I deeply realized that it was George's and my indulgence that had nurtured such a monster. This twisted plot, I'm going to slap it back into shape. I switched hands and slapped him again. "This slap is for your cold-blooded heartlessness. This slap is for your..." Frank snapped back to reality, took half a step back to dodge my slap, and looked at me in disbelief. "Mom, why did you hit me for no reason?" I was furious. "Let me ask you, why did you skip work and go to the hospital?" Frank paused for a moment. "Nicole is sick." "Oh, Nicole is sick. You're such a rare good man. You're not related to her at all. What does her being sick have to do with you? Why do you have to take care of her? Frank said, Mom, you know as well as I do that Nicole went abroad for my sake back then. I can't just abandon her. Don't get too close to me. I have megalophobia. I'm afraid of huge idiots. Back then, she hid the fact that she was sick and broke up with you to go abroad because she didn't want to upset you. Now she's shamelessly come back to cry to you about her illness. Does she think you won't be upset now? And what kind of terminal illness drags on for so many years? If it hasn't been cured after all this time, why isn't she dead yet? Even if we take a huge step back and assume she really is sick, did you cause her illness? What does it have to do with you whether she gets better or not? Frank, don't forget your current status. You're married to Ophelia, you have a family. Hearing Ophelia's name, Frank's voice became resentful. If it weren't for Nicole leaving back then, I would never have married that woman. Nicole meant something different to me. She was the first woman I ever loved in my life. All right, you're so noble. I clapped my hands. I'll call Ophelia right now, since you hate her so much. Both of you should sign the divorce papers today and not waste her precious youth. Of course, since you had an emotional affair, you'll leave with nothing. Seeing that I was actually taking out my phone, Frank panicked again and desperately tried to stop me from making the call. His indecisiveness made my hands itch, and just as I was about to slap this unfilial son again, someone grabbed my wrist. I glared at George with dissatisfaction. George, why are you stopping me from disciplining my son? Look at what he's become now. How dare he have the audacity to say that if Nicole can't be cured, all the doctors in the city will have to pay with their lives. I don't know who he learned this disgraceful behavior from. Frank's gaze instinctively turned toward George. George's expression stiffened, and he looked up at the sky very unnaturally. I pointed at Frank's nose. Looking at your dad won't help. No one can save you today. I'm really laughing myself to death. So you want to be buried with me? Well, today, I'll show you who buries whom first. George, let go of me. George rubbed the palm of my hand, looked up, and sighed, hitting so hard. Aren't you afraid of hurting your hand? He took half a step back, clenched his fist, and before I could react, George had already punched Frank in the face. His strength is much greater than mine. Frank staggered, barely catching himself on the edge of the table to avoid falling, and a red, swollen mark immediately appeared on his face. He covered half of his face and muttered in disbelief, Dad, for over 20 years, Frank had been reckless and unrestrained. But now he finally experienced a mixed doubles beating from both his parents. Frank was convinced, physically, though his eyes were filled with anger and dissatisfaction. He no longer talked about curing Nicole at every turn. I was also tired of scolding him. So I took the water cup from George and moistened my throat. That's it for today. If I catch you acting crazy again, I'll slap you again. All right, nothing else. You should head back to the hospital now. Frank widened his eyes, completely baffled as to why I had called him out of the hospital just to beat him up and then told him to go back. I didn't tell you to look for Nicole. It's Ophelia. She was in a car accident, right next to Nicole's hospital room. Frank's face turned pale. Yes, the story is just that melodramatic. We have no idea why those with terminal illnesses and those who got into car accidents ended up on the same floor. In the original book, at this point, Frank was completely preoccupied with his first love who had returned to the country, busily attending to Nicole in the hospital and ignoring all of his wife's missed calls. At that moment, Ophelia happened to be involved in a minor accident, hitting her head. She tried calling Frank, but the line was always busy. So she had to take a taxi to the hospital to get her wound bandaged. There, she happened to see her husband showing an unfamiliar tenderness to another woman. Feeling disheartened, Ophelia was then informed by the doctor that she was 2 months pregnant. The story then revolves around this pregnancy, unfolding over 600 chapters with themes such as whether to have an abortion, the mystery of the child's paternity. The only cure for the white moonlight's illness is the child's umbilical cord blood, and Mr. Green, stop tormenting her. The wife has run away with the child. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. Frank, the instigator, is still yelling in front of me. A car accident. How is that possible? That woman is probably trying to play hard to get again. Mom, don't be fooled by her. The corner of my mouth twitched, and I raised my hand. Frank instinctively flinched to the side. Are you going or not? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, Frank dashed off in a flash. I instructed the driver to make sure Frank was taken to Ophelia's hospital room, and only then did I feel a sense of relief. Holding my still slightly swollen and aching head, I lay down leisurely. George silently watched me, his expression unreadable. Kathy, how did you know Ophelia was in a car accident? I fell down the stairs and was unconscious for a while. And this happened at the same time as Frank's hospital madness and Ophelia's car accident. From George's perspective, I really shouldn't have known about these things as soon as I woke up, but I couldn't say I read it in a book, so I brushed it off. Even as a married couple, we all have our little secrets. A tactful man knows not to ask questions he shouldn't. George laughed and, as advised, didn't press further. Frank irritably ran his fingers through his hair and opened his phone. Only to see several missed calls from Ophelia. His finger hovered over the callback button, but he couldn't bring himself to press it. His first encounter with Ophelia hadn't been a pleasant one. Back then, someone had drugged him at a hotel, and Ophelia, who was working part-time there, accidentally stumbled into his room. It all happened so suddenly. Someone took photos of him and Ophelia, intending to sell them for a good price, but George intercepted them. George held the photos and asked calmly what he intended to do. Frank had always been afraid of his quiet father, especially since he was the one at fault this time, so Frank gritted his teeth and said, "I will marry her." He could only give Ophelia the title of Mrs. Green, nothing more. He never considered Ophelia to be the kind of person he would like. What he liked were flowers like Nicole, carefully nurtured and cultivated in a greenhouse, bright and vibrant, not someone like Ophelia, who always kept her eyes downcast, reflecting a dull pain. Just looking at her made him unhappy, and even during intimate moments, he would force her to close her eyes. The more he noticed the differences between Ophelia and Nicole, the more resentment grew in his heart. This shouldn't be his marriage, but he couldn't divorce Ophelia. Why couldn't he divorce Ophelia? Now his true love has returned to him, and the turmoil from that previous incident has gradually subsided. As long as he settles things with Ophelia, I believe his parents won't have anything to say. Divorcing Ophelia, then Frank muttered to himself, his brow furrowing with displeasure. There's a subtle discomfort in my heart, a feeling that's hard to describe. Mr. Green, are you here to see Miss Nicole again? You're so attentive to her. Frank paused. No. Which room is Ophelia in? The nurse was taken aback, picked up the register, and flipped through it. Ophelia, the one who was in the multi-car accident today. Frank's heart tightened, and he grabbed the nurse's wrist abruptly. What happened to her? Where is she? Tell me right now. If anything happens to her, I'll make this entire hospital. Frank was about to utter a harsh remark but suddenly remembered his mother's slap, so he simply shut his mouth. In room 302, Frank quickened his pace and eventually broke into a run. Ophelia's room turned out to be right next to Nicole's, yet today he had been running around solely for Nicole, completely unaware that his wife, just a wall away, had been in such a serious car accident. Frank's face grew increasingly pale, his hands clenched so tightly that his fingernails almost dug into his flesh. A belated fear washed over him, and Frank couldn't stop praying. Ophelia, you must be okay. As long as you're safe, I promise I'll treat you. The hospital room door opened. But the expected tragedy did not occur. Ophelia was sitting perfectly fine on the hospital bed, with the only injury being a scrape on her forehead. Frank had just breathed a sigh of relief when another wave of anger surged in his heart, because he saw Ophelia smiling charmingly at the doctor in front of her. She had never smiled at him like that. Even now, the face that had just been smiling so tenderly turned cold the moment he saw him. Frank sneered. He knew this doctor. He was Ophelia's childhood friend. He had looked into their relationship, and it was indeed very close. He strode over, ignoring the others present, and pulled Ophelia up from the bed. Ophelia, I underestimated you. Your acting skills have become so refined, even performing in front of my mother. Come back with me quickly and explain everything to my mother. Ouch. Ophelia winced in pain as she was abruptly pulled up. Charles restrained Frank's movement. You're hurting her. Oh, what does it have to do with you, Dr. Cheng? This is a matter between us as a married couple. You've overstepped. Charles was also angry. If you truly consider Ophelia your wife, you should have been by her side after her car accident today, not staying with another woman. Upon hearing this, Ophelia's fingers trembled slightly. Ophelia, you call her that quite affectionately. Frank didn't notice Ophelia's movement. He had already held a grudge against Charles. And now with an excuse, he grabbed the other's collar. Ophelia is mine. The two were at daggers drawn, almost coming to blows. At the critical moment, the hospital room door was abruptly pushed open again. a dignified noblewoman strode in angrily in high heels. In front of everyone, she raised her hand and slapped Frank twice. You wretched thing. I told you to care for your wife, not to get jealous and start a fight. With that resounding slap, the system prompt sounded at just the right moment. Avoiding ineffective conflict, current level of drama, 80%, that was close, that was close. Luckily, I made it. Lying in bed, I recalled the plot of the original book, and the more I lay there, the more uneasy I felt. I remember in the original book, after Frank found out Ophelia was pregnant, he initially intended to stay with her, but due to Nicole's scheming, he ended up believing the child wasn't his. But for Nicole to frame someone, she would need a target, right? I couldn't remember who the child's biological father was until Dr. James came back to take my blood pressure. I stared at his white coat for a long time. George stood nearby with his arms crossed and said, "Heh, Dr. James, that's a nice outfit you have." Dr. James was sweating. "Ma'am, please stop staring. If you really like it, I can send you the link." Suddenly, it dawned on me. The person who was mistaken for having an affair with Ophelia was none other than her attending physician. Charles was the first to know about Ophelia's pregnancy, because Ophelia was unsure about whether to keep the child. She asked Charles to keep her pregnancy a secret. Little did she expect that, after the truth came to light, this matter would become the basis for Ophelia's guilty conscience. According to the current timeline, Frank is going to the hospital room to find Ophelia, and the three of them are likely to run into each other. Dr. James looked at my suddenly soaring blood pressure in horror, and I threw off the blanket and got up. George stopped me. "Kathy, you're not well yet. Where are you going?" With a grave expression, I said, "Cleaning house." George offered to accompany me, and I scratched my head, wondering why he was acting so strangely today. Normally, he would have gone back to the company by now. Why was he suddenly so clingy today? "George, I just remembered there's another matter I need you to handle." I whispered in his ear. George hesitated. "That doesn't seem appropriate." "Then I beg you." After realizing this is a world from a book, I have completely let go of all my burdens. "Please, I beg you, George." George said, "All right, Mom, how did you get here?" Ophelia looked somewhat flustered. She stood up in a panic, lowered her eyes, and seemed a bit timid. Although Ophelia and Frank have been married for 3 years, we don't live together. We only see each other a few times a year during holidays, so she and I are not very familiar with each other. Because of a car accident, Ophelia's already pale face looked even more pitiful. She had no relatives left on her mother's side. On her husband's side, there was only a silent father-in-law, a domineering mother-in-law, and a cheating husband. Thinking about it, Ophelia really is quite pitiful. I held her hand and sat her down with concern. "Ophelia, how are you feeling? If that wretched boy ignores you, you still have your mom. Why didn't you tell me about the car accident?" Ophelia pursed her lips. "Mom, I'm fine." Frank snorted coldly from the side. "Mom, now you've heard it. She's just pretending to be pitiful. It's just a minor injury, yet you're making such a big fuss by coming to the hospital. Who knows, maybe you're just using this as an excuse to see someone." Ophelia lowered her eyelashes and remained silent. But I was close enough to see her trembling shoulders. Charles said with a look of anger, "Do you know how dangerous the situation was? If Ophelia hadn't been lucky, if the wound had been just a fraction off, she could have been paralyzed for life, and besides, she's still." Frank clenched his jaw, his eyes filled with fury. "If I hadn't been there, he would have surely started a fight with Charles again. This is between me and her." "What's it to you?" Frank yelled. And I yelled even louder. "Frank, are you crazy? If I weren't afraid of scaring Ophelia, I would have given him a couple more hits." "So what? What answer do you want? Does it have to be that Ophelia is seriously injured in a car accident, or even loses her life, and you only care about your old flame and neglect her? Only then will you hypocritically come to regret, feel guilty, and treat her well." Frank's pupils contracted, his lips trembling slightly, his gaze turned to Ophelia. A flicker of fear in his eyes. "But isn't she fine now?" I sneered. "Nothing works for you, and everything works for you. Young Master Gu, you're really hard to please." "I didn't want anything to happen to her," I said. "You shouldn't be saying that to me." Frank fell silent for a long moment, his shoulders slumping. He walked over to Ophelia and carefully knelt down in front of her. "Ophelia, is there anywhere else you're feeling uncomfortable, aside from this wound? Have you had a full checkup? What did the doctor say?" The system beeped in my mind. Misunderstanding level decreased. Current drama level, 60%. Ophelia paused. then softly answered Frank's question. Charles watched the scene, closed his eyes briefly, and retreated outside the door. Normally, this would be the couple's private time. And I should have tactfully stepped out as well, but I knew exactly what was about to happen next, so I simply vacated the spot next to Ophelia, crossed my legs, and plopped down on the sofa. Frank's greatest physical advantage is his eyes. He doesn't even need to say much. Just by gazing at someone so intently, he can create the illusion of deep affection out of thin air. After hearing Ophelia's answer, he still felt uneasy and asked to see her medical report. Ophelia lowered her gaze, fiddling with her fingers, as if she had finally made up her mind about something. Mom, Frank, I have something to tell you. Frank frowned deeply. Is there something wrong with the test results? No, Ophelia shook her head, a smile curling at the corner of her mouth. Frank, actually, why should I transfer hospitals if I don't want to? Outside the ward, a sudden commotion erupted, mingled with the soothing words of many people. Among them, a clear, bright female voice stood out the most. Do you know what Frank and I are to each other? Who gave you the nerve? It was Nicole's voice. Frank abruptly stood up, about to walk out, but Ophelia grabbed his hand, holding it tightly, her gaze pleading. Frank, what I'm about to say is very important. I rested my chin on my hand, waiting with Ophelia for Frank's response, but then I saw Frank pull his hand away from Ophelia's. Just a moment. Ophelia, I'll come back to you in a little while. I crossed my arms and stood up. Frank looked at me warily, covering his face. I spread my hands. Go if you want. I won't stop you this time. I hope you won't regret it later. I wonder if Frank realizes that this is the last chance Ophelia will ever give him. Unfortunately, he missed the one and only opportunity. Isn't Nicole supposed to be gravely ill? I asked George to transfer Nicole from the city hospital to the best hospital abroad, whether she's sick or not. It's only natural to get a thorough checkup to find out. Nicole was unwilling, and so was Frank. Nicole was sent abroad, and Frank followed her, leaving behind his wife who hadn't fully recovered from her illness and his elderly mother who was waiting to give him a scolding. Of course, I knew what Ophelia didn't say at the hospital. It was about her pregnancy. I gave Ophelia two options. Ophelia, you can keep the baby. If you need help, I can assist in raising the child. But if you want nothing more to do with Frank, I'll respect that and never disturb you again. I'll provide enough financial support to ensure you and the child live comfortably. Of course, if you don't want to keep the baby, I can arrange for you to have the procedure at the best hospital. In fact, I'd recommend this option. You're still so young. Having a child now could limit many of your future opportunities. Whatever you decide, I'll help you arrange everything. You're so talented. I'm sure you'll quickly establish yourself in society. During this time with Ophelia, she and I have become quite familiar. She didn't answer my question directly, just clutched the divorce papers that had been returned once again. But what about Frank? I let out a cold laugh. That scoundrel really wants to have his cake and eat it too. He chased after another woman abroad. Yet every divorce document Ophelia sent him was torn up and sent back without exception. Ophelia, let me tell you. Divorce is out of the question. Can you stop being so childish? How many times do I have to tell you? Nicole can't do without me here. Do you really have to use such methods to force me to return to the country? I'm telling you, doing this will only make me more and more annoyed with you. I watched Ophelia's face grow increasingly pale as she held her phone, and I motioned for her to hand it to me. Frank, want to try acting tough again? Frank fell silent. You can stay away for all I care. Your mother just signed up for boxing classes, and my hands are itching to try them out on you when you get back. A busy tone came from the phone. Frank had hung up. I cracked my knuckles loudly. Ophelia, don't worry about Frank. If you want a divorce, I have 10,000 ways to make sure he never bothers you again. Mom, but Frank is your son. Why would you? I curved my lips and ruffled her hair. It was rare for an elder to show such affection toward her. She widened her eyes and looked at me, like a startled little squirrel. Ophelia, you forgot. Now you're my daughter too. Oh, right. Not after the divorce. But it's okay. You can still be my goddaughter. Haha. Ophelia's eyes glistened as she nodded at me vigorously. In the end, Ophelia chose to keep the child. I wasn't very surprised by this outcome. I respect any decision she makes. I bought a new house in the city center under her name so she can rest peacefully during her pregnancy. George doesn't understand why I went to such lengths. I turned my back to him, lying on the bed, and yawned. Do you have a problem with that? George shook his head. If it makes you happy. But Kathy, he wanted to say more, but I waved my hand, not in the mood to listen any further. George found out that Frank bought a flight back home tomorrow, now that Ophelia is already showing her pregnancy. I have to go to the airport early in the morning to catch that rebellious son of mine before he does something utterly outrageous again. George closed his mouth. He was always a man of few words, and I don't know why he's been so talkative lately, so fond of chattering. He lay down behind me, somewhat puzzled. Kathy, it seems like it's been a long time since you've kissed me. I closed my eyes, not asleep. Yet I remained unmoved upon hearing George's words. Never mind, George said. Good night, Kathy. We had to say good night before sleeping and share a morning kiss upon waking up. This was a rule I had forced George to agree to right after we got married, because I knew George didn't like me. I always thought that if I turned affection into a tangible habit, day by day, even if he didn't love me at first, he might come to love me a little more. I snuggled into the blanket, half asleep. My mind filled with many thoughts, both the entanglement between Frank and Ophelia in the original book and the past between George and me. The situation between George and me has a striking resemblance to that of Ophelia and Frank. George also has his own white moonlight. He prefers my sister over me. Unfortunately, on the eve of the wedding, my sister eloped with a wandering painter. As a second choice, he picked me. But I genuinely liked George. I've liked him since we were children. At first, he was very cold to me, often didn't come home, and wasn't by my side when I gave birth. But I endured all of this. I reined in my flamboyant personality and became virtuous and gentle. I was imitating my sister, hoping that by doing so, George would like me a little more. Later, George did indeed slowly become better and better to me. He started to care about me, to show concern for me. But I don't know whether his feelings come out of habit or out of love, yet I am content. It doesn't matter if he doesn't love me, at least he can't do without me anymore. Even up until the moment before I recalled the original story's plot, I still thought this way, so I'm trying so hard to change the path that was set for Ophelia in the original book. Perhaps it's also an attempt to pull myself out of the prison I was trapped in years ago. Blinded by love, I barely slept all night. And just as I managed to doze off for a bit, I was jolted awake by the system's sharp alert. Detected a significant surge in the plot's melodrama. Please quickly reduce the melodrama level. No matter how much you guard against it, something still goes wrong. The city issued a typhoon warning. To avoid the typhoon, Frank changed his flight to an earlier one and returned overnight, so I wasn't able to meet up with him. The reason he was in such a hurry to come back was quite simple and straightforward. Nicole somehow got hold of photos of Ophelia entering and leaving the prenatal checkup center and whispered in Frank's ear, saying things like, "Miss Song is pregnant. It looks like you're going to be a dad." According to the report, Miss Song is 5 months pregnant. But, Frank, didn't you go abroad with me half a year ago? Oh, I didn't say anything. Nicole is stirring up trouble. And that's not right of her, but if you ask me, it's also because Frank is a complete idiot, getting so worked up over just a couple of sentences. He first returned home and learned from the servant that Ophelia hadn't been back there for the past 6 months. Then, somehow, he managed to get Ophelia's current address. Seeing her heavily pregnant belly, he completely believed Nicole's words and even assumed the house she was living in was bought for her by her lover, on a day of pouring rain. He actually forced Ophelia to kneel in the rain, demanding to know who the father of her child was. Ophelia was stubborn too, gritting her teeth and refusing to say a word. In the end, she collapsed in the rain with a high fever. Hearing this, I'm about to faint from anger too. What about Ophelia? How is she now? George said. She's in the emergency room. Frank is with her at the hospital. I rolled my eyes and hurriedly grabbed my bag to rush to the hospital. Frank sat at the door of the operating room, his knuckles white from clenching. He hadn't slept all night either, his hair falling over his forehead, his face haggard and looking worse than death. When he saw me approaching, it was as if he had finally regained his senses. He stood up in a panic, flustered and at a loss, asking me, "Mom, blood, what do we do? She's lost so much blood." I slapped him, the force so strong that his face jerked to the side, a red mark instantly appearing on his cheek. Yet, as if he felt nothing, his fingers trembled uncontrollably. I stopped what I was doing when I saw his reaction. Hitting him now might actually make him feel better. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I was speechless. Well, what else? He grabbed his own hair, slumped against the wall, and sat down on the floor. I didn't mean for this to happen. I just didn't want to have any regrets. I wanted to settle things with Nicole and then come back to live a good life with Ophelia. I really never meant to hurt her. I leaned down and patted his face. Is this all it takes to break you? The worst is yet to come. You think you have it all figured out, don't you, leaving your wife behind to go abroad and take care of your mistress, then coming back to play the role of the good husband. So you get to be the good guy in every situation, and do you really think Nicole's so-called illness can actually be cured? Frank looked up at me, bewildered. She knows this excuse is the only way to keep you by her side. Why would she let go of that opportunity? How long are you planning to stay with her? A year? 2 years? What if her illness never gets better? Will you just stay abroad with her forever? What about Ophelia? Should Ophelia just wait here for you willingly? Frank said, it won't be that long. I've talked to the doctor. And Nicole's illness will be cured in at most another 6 months. It's not like she wanted to get this kind of illness. She suffers every day from the treatment. Has this son been kicked in the head by a donkey? Oh, then, would you like to guess where Nicole, who should be in the hospital receiving treatment right now after you return to the country, actually is? Frank snapped back to reality, pulled out his phone, and made a call. As his expression grew increasingly grim, it was clear the outcome was far from ideal. Satisfied to hear the prompt indicating a drop in the drama level, I seized the moment and pulled out a prenatal paternity test from my bag. I had prepared this a long time ago to deal with the upcoming plot twists, but I never expected to use it under these circumstances. I threw the report in his face and said coldly, "Are you satisfied with this answer?" Frank was as if struck by lightning, his fingers tightly gripping the sheet of paper. The black and white text was far more convincing than what Nicole had presented. The door to the operating room was pushed open, and a nurse walked out, calling loudly, "Ophelia, who is Ophelia's family?" Frank stumbled forward. I am her husband." The nurse glanced at him, her tone reproachful. "The patient is out of danger, but unfortunately, the baby couldn't be saved." "What kind of husband are you? A 26-week pregnant woman, and you didn't rush her to the hospital when she had a fever? Letting her get drenched in the rain for so long. At 26 weeks, the fetus is already mostly formed, the brain responded to the touch, and occasionally, when Ophelia placed her hand on her belly, she would look up at me with surprise and delight. Mom, I think the baby just kicked me." I'm not entirely sure what emotions she's feeling toward Frank right now, but she has a deep love for the child in her womb, as the one who started all this. I don't understand how Frank has the nerve to act heartbroken here. The one who is clearly suffering more now is Ophelia. Ophelia woke up from the anesthesia to see Frank kneeling by her bedside. "I was wrong, Ophelia. I really know I was wrong. I'm sorry. You, actually, why don't you hit me or scold me? I'll accept it all. I didn't mean to hurt you, really, Ophelia. I was just too scared. I was afraid you were really going to leave me." His eyes were bloodshot. And seeing Ophelia's indifferent expression, the mask of strength he always wore finally shattered. "Ophelia, a child, we can have another child. Just look at me. As long as you can forgive me, I'll agree to anything you ask." Hearing this, Ophelia finally opened her dry, cracked lips. "Do you really mean anything?" Frank nodded repeatedly. Ophelia closed her eyes. "Let's get a divorce." "I don't want anything, Frank." "I want a divorce." Frank's heart plummeted into an abyss. He opened his mouth, but it took him a long moment to find his voice. "No, a divorce is not an option." This answer was within Ophelia's expectations. She forced a smile, her lips curling reluctantly. "I just want a divorce, Frank. How much do you hate me to torture me like this?" Frank was eager to explain. "I don't dislike you, Ophelia. In fact, from the very first day I met you, I've been drawn to you. I never wanted to admit it, but I do like you," Ophelia said with an indifferent expression. "Your love is terrifying, Frank. I will sue you, domestic violence, marital infidelity. If you still want to preserve some dignity for both of us, sign the divorce papers. I won't see you again until you sign." Ophelia gave him an ultimatum. Frank wasn't afraid of Ophelia suing him. What he feared was that once things reached that point, there would truly be no turning back between them. Frank's lips trembled slightly. "All right, I'll sign. You still need someone to take care of you in your current condition. I'll sign whatever you want me to, but can you come home with me first? Let me take care of you." Ophelia turned her head away. No, Ophelia's determination to divorce was firm enough that the drama's absurdity level had already decreased significantly, yet that value stubbornly remained at 30%, refusing to drop any further, logically speaking. The main couple is about to divorce, and I've been keeping a close watch on Frank, so there shouldn't be any drama left. I just can't figure out where the remaining melodrama is going to unfold, until an unexpected character showed up at the door. I was still at Frank's place, helping Ophelia pack the last of her belongings, when a curly-haired woman wearing sunglasses confidently pushed the door open and walked in. Her cheeks were rosy, and she looked full of vitality, not at all like someone who was sick. Only a fool like Frank would fall for that. I straightened up, pursed my lips, and cracked my knuckles. I thought, I know where the last 30% is. When Nicole saw me, she immediately put on a smile and pretended to be familiar, trying to link arms with me. Auntie, it's been a long time. What brings you here? I shook off her hand. Who are you, butler? Why did you let just anyone in? Get her out. A hint of embarrassment flashed across Nicole's face as she quickly took off her sunglasses and explained, Auntie, it's me, Nicole. She tucked her hair behind her ear, looking shy. Later, Frank will probably introduce me to you all properly. I really laughed. This person is also a bit of a nutcase. As soon as she heard the news of Frank's divorce, she didn't even bother pretending to be sick anymore. Immediately showed up acting like the lady of the house. And even dared to chatter and make a fuss in front of me. All right, I'll go and slap Frank to vent my anger later. You want to join the Green family? Wait until I'm dead. Nicole paused. Auntie, Frank and I are truly in love. 30 million. For a moment, her eyes showed a flicker of emotion, but after a brief silence, she continued, Auntie, my love for Frank can't be measured by money. Even if you offered me 30 million, I wouldn't leave him. You think too highly of yourself, I said. I'm telling you to give me 30 million, and I'll let Frank and you go your own way. Nicole could no longer maintain her smile. I couldn't be bothered to deal with her, so I made a call and ordered Frank to come over immediately to handle it. As soon as Nicole saw Frank, it was as if she had seen a savior. Frank, your mother seems to have some misunderstanding about me. Please speak up for me. Please step aside. These past few days, because of the divorce with Ophelia, he had almost lost half his soul. He looked truly pitiful, but the scolding he deserved couldn't be avoided. I bypassed Nicole and slapped Frank first. Nicole stared at the scene in shock. I patted Frank's face. It's handled. If you let her run to Ophelia again, you know I'll slap you again, right? I turned my back and walked toward the door, leaving behind a few terrified screams from Nicole. Ophelia just wants to divorce Frank as soon as possible. She was even willing to forego the division of assets just to get rid of him quickly. I said that wouldn't do, so, while helping her with the divorce proceedings, I made sure she got the majority of Frank's assets. Frank felt guilty to begin with, so naturally he wouldn't refuse, and he didn't dare to refuse either. On the other hand, Ophelia hesitated to accept it. Mom, this isn't appropriate. Let's just divide things as they should be. I don't want to take more than my share from him. I held her hand and said, this is what he owes you. In my opinion, you're actually taking too little. He should be made to live like a beggar. Ophelia was still hesitant. She held my hand in return and said, Mom, I know you care about me, but I don't want to cause a rift between you and your son because of me. After the divorce, I'll leave this place. But Frank is different. You still have to live together, I said indifferently. Oh, what's the big deal? Everything Frank has now was given by George anyway. I'll talk to George later and split things up with him, so he doesn't keep mooching off us. But you, Ophelia, if you're sad, don't hold it in, don't let it make you sick. From the day Ophelia woke up after the surgery, to finding out she'd lost her child, to signing the divorce papers, she didn't shed a single tear, no sadness, no breakdown, only a terrifying calm. Ophelia paused, touched her nose, and smiled at me. Why would I be sad, Mom? Like you said before, I'm still so young. This relationship was just a small episode in my life. Thanks to you, I'd become a little rich woman, and the best is yet to come. The more Ophelia acted as if it were nothing, the more uneasy I felt. Ophelia, you don't have to spare my feelings just because I'm Frank's mom. I've long given up on this son. If you want to scold him, go ahead. If you want to hit him, I'll help you do it. Ophelia shook her head. He has nothing to do with me now. I have nothing to complain about him. How could you not? After all these years of marriage, has he ever truly regarded you as his wife? After all you've done for him at home, has he ever once said thank you? Besides, even after marrying you, he hasn't settled down. What does it mean that he still has another woman in his heart, and he even left his pregnant wife behind to go abroad? If he was really so deeply in love with Nicole, he should have remained faithful to her back then. Why did he get involved with you? It's like separating the person from the heart, isn't it? The more I spoke, the angrier I became. Most importantly, it was him who started this relationship in the first place. How dare he treat you like this? I stopped all my cursing. Ophelia in front of me was already covered in tears. At first, it was quiet sobbing, which then turned into loud wailing, making my nose sting with emotion. She cried while cursing, "Frank is such a jerk." I agreed with her, having already detached myself from my identity as Frank's mother. Now, I was the reader who had once been filled with the same fury while reading this novel, joining the tormented female protagonist in the original story to tear the male lead to shreds. By the end, Ophelia was exhausted from all the cursing. I took a sip of water to moisten my throat and continued my furious tirade. "And Frank's dad, I don't even want to talk about him." Ophelia's eyes were red, and she froze for a moment upon hearing this. "Dad, what's wrong with him? I'm so done with this. It's like I'm the only one who gave birth to this child, right? He doesn't even bother to discipline him. It's all because he's a bad influence. The older one loves playing the substitute game, and the younger one just follows suit." Ophelia can join me in cursing Frank, but when it comes to George, she wisely keeps her mouth shut. Years of pent-up resentment burst out all at once. I tightly grasped Ophelia's hand. "Ophelia, wait for me. I'll get a divorce from this forced marriage too, and then we'll leave together. Let that pair of scoundrel father and son stay single." Ophelia's pupils trembled, and her expression stiffened, as if she had seen something unsettling. "Dad," I interrupted her. "You don't need to speak for him. I'm going to divorce him today." Ophelia quickly spoke up, raising her voice to drown out mine. "Dad, what brings you here?" I turned around belatedly, only to find George standing behind me, though I had no idea when he had arrived. The corners of his mouth drooped slightly, his eyes unreadable as he stared at me intently. "Why?" Before I could answer, George continued, "I don't agree to a divorce." The words I blurted out in the heat of the moment were heard in their entirety by George. After 20 years of marriage, both of us are getting on in years, and for the first time, we've fallen into a cold war, or rather, I'm the only one fighting it. I'm also annoyed. "What's wrong?" I didn't say anything wrong. Who is he giving that sour face to? Now, I won't naively cling to my virtuous and gentle image anymore. If George dares to provoke me, I'll slap him too. The system popped up to remind me. "Host, the drama value has been reset to 0. You can go home at any time." I know, the mission is complete, and I can go back now. But perhaps due to a feeling of nervousness about returning home, I hesitated to summon the system. In this world, I haven't become someone else. Instead, I've experienced a completely new life just as I am. Here, I also have my family, my friends, and many others I find hard to part with. The time I've spent living here has even surpassed that in my original world. I'm unsure whether I should go back, and it's kept me up for several nights. Unfortunately, Frank has always been tactless. I was already furious, and he just added fuel to the fire. "Mom, do you know that Ophelia is going abroad?" At that moment, I was having breakfast, at the rectangular dining table. I usually sat next to George, but this time, seeing him there, I snorted and asked the butler to bring my portion to the seat farthest from him. "What does her going abroad have to do with you?" Frank hesitated for a long time, lowering his eyes. "I don't want her to leave." I sneered a few times. Frank has been tied up in lawsuits lately, and I specifically told George not to help him this time, and even had George withdraw the investment in his subsidiary. It seems Frank isn't troubled enough yet. He still has the energy to bother Ophelia. Frank knows that Ophelia and I are on good terms now. He came to the old house early in the morning to ask if I could help him win her back. I'm so angry I could laugh. "Where do you get the nerve? Do you really think I'd help you?" "Mom, I really know I was wrong. I've already cleaned things up with Nicole. Please, just help me this once." Frank choked up several times. "Without Ophelia, I really can't go on living." George felt a bit uneasy, looking as if he wanted to say something. But I shot him a sharp glare. "If you can't go on living, then just die. Maybe she'll come to your funeral." I was in a bad mood and spoke harshly. Upon hearing my words, Frank widened his eyes slightly. "Mom, am I still your son? I am your only child, the sole heir of the Green family. How could you treat me like this?" I slammed the table and stood up with a loud thud. Frank instinctively took half a step back and covered his face. "Who said you are my only child?" Frank's mouth opened slightly, and he quickly glanced at George. You have an illegitimate child." George also stopped all movement, staring at me without blinking, taking Frank by surprise. I slapped him. "Get out of here, you wretch. Is that how you think of your mother? Giving birth to you was worse than giving birth to a piece of char siu." I'll just have to reincarnate with your dad and make another one someday. George's entire face stiffened, and his chopsticks fell to the floor. I was very dissatisfied with his reaction. You're not willing. Seeing George hesitate to speak, I raised my hand again. His lips trembled, and he bowed his head deeply. It will definitely be born. I really can't take it anymore. George was lying right next to me, tossing and turning restlessly, making it impossible for me to fall asleep. I threw a pillow at him. If you're not going to sleep, get out. George took the pillow off. Kathy, I want to talk to you about something. About the child. I instinctively felt that he wanted to plead for Frank. This matter is not up for discussion. It's really true that men are best at empathizing with other men. Don't you know how Frank treated Ophelia? How dare you even think about getting them back together? Your son's life matters. But does Ophelia owe your family anything? After I lashed out at him, George fell silent for a moment. It's not about Frank. It's about what you said this morning, that you still want to have another child. That was just something I said off the top of my head. Just kidding, I'm almost menopausal. How could I possibly have a baby? If you really want one, we can adopt another. If you don't like Frank, we can just not acknowledge him as our son. George's words were full of resistance, and I snapped. From your tone, it sounds like you're disgusted. What, do you think I'm too old and unattractive to have a child with? That's not what I meant, George said. First of all, you've been through childbirth before. From pregnancy to delivery to postpartum recovery, each stage is incredibly difficult. Besides, we're not young anymore. The risks of pregnancy are higher for older mothers, so this stage of our lives just isn't the right time. George's nagging made me sleepy. I pulled the blanket over my head. All right, I know you're too old and can't do it anymore. Fine, George is 2 years older than me. Although he's already in his 40s, he has always been very disciplined, often works out, and has maintained himself well to this day. I know very well whether he can or can't do it, but I just didn't want to listen to his nagging anymore, so I deliberately said that to shut him up. But after an eerie silence, George actually didn't argue back. I poked my head out from under the quilt, and George looked at me quietly, lost in thought. Years have passed, and as I gaze at this face that has accompanied me through most of my life, time has been kind to him, leaving few traces on his face, occasionally giving me the illusion that I am the only one growing old. He raised his hand and gently touched my hair. Yes, I really can't have children anymore, but if there's anything else you want, I'll make it up to you twice over. So, can you not divorce me because of this? I was taken aback. What do you mean, you can't have children? George lowered his eyes. I've had a vasectomy, Kathy. When I gave birth to Frank, I had a difficult delivery. The dozen or so hours I spent in the hospital were simply unbearable. But George, as my husband, never showed up even once. He wasn't even in H City at the time. He was still away on a business trip. At that moment, I couldn't care less about acting and let out all the swear words. But mostly, I cried and sobbed, shouting, I hate you, George. You're so annoying. If I ever like you again, I won't be a Fong anymore. But when I woke up, I saw George sleeping by my hospital bed, dark circles under his eyes, frowning as he held my hand. I saw George awkwardly holding Frank, with a confused expression that didn't suit him at all. When the elevator was under repair, George carefully carried me down the 13 flights of hospital stairs, his forehead beaded with sweat, not saying a word. I shamefully fell in love with him again. I couldn't make it back at that time. I was truly at my wit's end. As luck would have it, I encountered a once-in-a-century snowstorm. Flights were grounded, high-speed trains were suspended, and many sections of the highways were closed. According to George, he had to take multiple buses and trucks, and even hitched a ride on an ox cart for a short stretch, before finally making it back to H City. But by the time he got back, I had already given birth. I was stunned. I had never heard George mention this, because the city he went to on a business trip was the city where his sister had settled after marriage. I always thought he wasn't there that day because he didn't want to come back. That's your fault too. I complained to him. I clearly reminded you at that time that my due date was approaching. If you hadn't gone on a business trip, this wouldn't have happened, would it, George? At that time, I almost died. George pursed his lips. I know, so I swear, I won't let that happen again. Having a child is too much of a burden for you. I don't want you to go through that kind of risk again. It seems as though the world operates by some kind of rule, just like in the original story. Ophelia faked her death to escape once, and Frank thought he had lost her completely. Only then did he learn to love her. Perhaps George is the same. He also felt that he was about to lose me. So it was probably from that day that he began to love me. I pouted, not feeling very happy about this realization, but there was also an indescribable sense of relief. Kathy, can we not get a divorce? I turned my back, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. It depends on my mood, not necessarily. So George tossed and turned all night again, which was really annoying. Tomorrow, I'll definitely have the housekeeper tidy up the guest room and make him sleep there. Divorce? I'm not getting a divorce. This status is just perfect. George has to listen to me, and Frank has to listen to me too. If I get divorced, how can I keep tormenting them? I haven't even settled the score with him for all he owes me. I sneered darkly. Yes, I can't divorce him and let him off easy. I will keep dragging him along like this, until death do us part. Host, are you really decided not to go back? Just for now, I corrected it. Didn't you say I could call you anytime I want? The system originally disagreed. It said it has business in other worlds and can't stay here all the time. I don't care about it. It was the one that inexplicably chose me, threw me into this world, and only showed up after so many years, leaving me with a complete mess. The current plot is already vastly different from the original book. Ophelia went abroad to pursue her dreams. Frank fell from a domineering CEO to a destitute man. And Nicole was also imprisoned, with no chance of turning things around. Oh. So even if the plot becomes more dramatic and cliched, it doesn't matter. No matter how much I dislike him, Frank is still the child I carried for 10 months and gave birth to. I see it clearly. His treacherous heart has never died. He's been secretly preparing to go abroad to find Ophelia. If I were to just walk away like this, with no one to restrain him, who knows what twists the already corrected plot might take. The system was at a loss for words and could only agree to grant me one permission, to contact it whenever I wanted to leave. As for George, the best approach I could think of was to lay all my cards on the table with him. I told him that I was not originally from this world and that I could leave at any time, with the system making an exception to appear and vouch for me. As a result, George was overwhelmed with a profound sense of unease. I've thought it all through. What he fears most right now is losing me. If I were to return to my original world, it would certainly deal him a heavy blow, but that would be like a psychological victory. Besides, no matter how much he suffers, I wouldn't be able to see it. Rather than that, it's better for me to become unpredictable. He won't know when I might leave, forever trapped in the fear of possibly losing me at any moment. I noticed George always kept his eyes fixed on me, as if afraid he might lose track of me if he looked away for even a moment. I kept a straight face, but inside I was absolutely thrilled, because Ophelia had invited me to attend her graduation ceremony abroad. George and his father, Frank, followed me around like shadows the entire day. One asks, can I not go? Another asks, can you take me with you? I say, no. George asks again, then when will you be back after you leave this time? Frank also asked, Mom, Ophelia, is she coming back? Once upon a time, the roles were reversed. I, or perhaps Ophelia, once asked with such passion and sorrow, when will you come back? Do you really have to go? I chuckled softly and replied with the same words, can you stop clinging to me all the time? What you're doing will only make me more and more annoyed. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.